Today, I would kind of like to talk about a rough topic, and this topic has to do with birth defects and child loss, pregnancy loss, anything along those lines. So if you don't want to listen, this is your warning now to just go ahead and move along. I've mentioned here before that I would like to talk about anencephaly regarding my daughter, and it's a bit of a hard topic, so it's taken me some time to talk about it. My hope, though, is that somebody can come across this video who is either going through the same thing or something similar and can find comfort in knowing that they're not alone. Back in December of 2021, my fiance and I found out that we were pregnant with our first child. We had our first ultrasound in January when I was about 10.5 weeks along. At the ultrasound, our little baby was super active and had a very strong heartbeat and didn't indicate that anything was wrong. My doctor ended up telling us that the best thing to do was just to monitor it, and so they wanted to do frequent ultrasounds. So we were a little concerned, but I was trying to stay on the positive side, especially since she said that they normally resolve. And worst case scenario, all the other bad stuff would happen. So the doctor's office calls, and we get our ultrasound set up. And the hospital that we go to has multiple locations. So the hospital that we went to for our first ultrasound was booked up, so they sent us to the more high-tech, fancy hospital. So we go to that appointment. At that time, I was 13 weeks exactly. And we go in thinking that we are going to just monitor the subchorionic hemorrhage, see how that's doing, and just see our nice, healthy baby. The ultrasound rooms had the screens that you could also see, so while the tech was doing their stuff, we're going through the ultrasound, and my fiance is trying to ask the tech, questions if they see anything wrong, if the baby's healthy. But as you know, techs can't say anything, and he kept saying that he couldn't say anything, and we just had to wait for the doctor. We got to a point in the ultrasound where he said that the baby wasn't moving how he needed the baby to move to get a better look at everything. So he went ahead and had me go pee, and then we were going to try again. So I go and I do that, and I come back, and we're waiting for the tech to come back. And when the tech comes back, he comes back with the doctor and somebody else who I was assuming was an intern or a shadow or just someone who was potentially learning. The doctor goes on to ask me if we have been told about anything wrong with pregnancy, and I say that we just know about the subchorionic hemorrhage. She says, okay, and they have me lie back because at this point they're doing an internal ultrasound instead of just the regular over-the-belly ultrasound. And that was so they could get a better look at the baby. I wasn't lying down for more than 5 minutes before the doctor stops and says that something is very wrong. The bed that they had me on was a rise and low bed, so they had me risen up, and they were lowering me down as they were starting to discuss what was happening and being seen on the ultrasound. The doctor starts asking us if we know anything about exencephaly and anencephaly sequences. And that was just a whole bit of mumbo jumbo to us, and we just say no. She goes on to explain that our baby has anencephaly, which is a birth defect. It is more specifically a neural tube birth defect, an NTD. She goes on to explain how the neural tube is the first thing that gets developed in the pregnancy. By the 24th to 28th day, it should be developed and closed. If the neural tube doesn't close at the top, then that prevents the skull and the brain from forming. So our baby had no skull, and what was supposed to be their brain was just a bunch of brain matter and tissue overgrowth. Getting all of this news was so crazy. It was just coming at us just so fast. She goes on to say how anencephaly is fatal. And I asked if it was fatal for me, because I was really hoping that that would be the end. As crazy as it sounds, I was genuinely hoping that she was going to say it was fatal for me because I didn't want anything to happen to my baby. She puts her hand on my knee and she tells me no, that it's fatal for the baby, that there's nothing that they can do, and that even if our baby was born, she would instantly die, or she would be born already dead, stillborn. At that point, it was almost like I could feel the world stop turning. Like everything came to a halt. Everything stopped. Everything became so silent to me. And at that point, everything kind of just became a mumble in my ear almost. We then got to find out what that third doctor. The third doctor was there to discuss our options. And as I get into these options, anybody that comes here with judgment, that has never gone through anything like this, has no right to judge me or anybody else that has ever been put in a position like this. At that point in time, they only gave us 2 options, and those were to carry to term the best that I could, or I could schedule a D&C and abort. We were absolutely devastated, but with all the news that we got and the severity of her condition, we chose that it would be best for her to go ahead and stop the pregnancy. We just didn't want her to suffer any longer or go through any more pain for our wanting of meeting her. So we go home to look for even more. We went home to find out some more answers. I was determined to find support groups for people that had to have been going through the same thing. Anencephaly is extremely rare. It only affects about 3 in 10,000 pregnancies or something like that a year. As of 2021, or 2022, that's what those numbers were. So I found some other groups and other moms, and I saw moms that were as far along as I were, that were able to get induced and meet their baby. And I wanted that option. But I didn't know if I could have that option. So we went ahead and we still went into my pre-op for the D&C. Before that, I had to go to my normal OB, and I expressed to her all my wants. I wanted handprints, footprints. I wanted to see her or him, because we didn't know at the time what they were. I wanted to hold them. I wanted all those things. But with the D&C, those things just aren't necessarily possible, but she put them in my notes anyways. The doctor at the pre-op saw those notes and asked if we were given the option to induce. We told her no, and she was a bit taken aback that we weren't, and she went right ahead and called over to labor and delivery to see how quickly she could get us in. So that was a Tuesday or a Monday. She came back and told us that we were in that next day. So I got really happy because I felt that that would be some kind of closure for me. So the doctor gave us one last ultrasound, let us hear her heartbeat for the first and the last time. She gave me a pill, I cannot remember the name of it, but it was to go ahead and to start the process, to soften my cervix and all of that. And then we went home to wait. They called us the next morning, and we were told to be there by 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. because they had a... So we got up, we packed, and we were headed off our way. We get to the hospital, and my mom meets us there, and we get us into our room, and we start doing all the paperwork and everything to get us started. They bring in a little baby box for stuff that she could have, or our baby could have worn after being born, and like a memory box. After all the paperwork was said and done and we got situated, it was time to start the process. I was administered a pill, again I don't remember the name of it, but it was in my cheeks every 2 hours, I think, and that was to naturally start the process of labor. I labored for 13 hours, and then our baby arrived. They called us the next morning, and we were told to be there by 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. because they had a... So we got up, we packed, and we were headed off our way. We get to the hospital, and my mom meets us there, and we get us into our room, and we start doing all the paperwork and everything to get us started. They bring in a little baby box for stuff that she could have, or our baby could have worn after being born, and like a memory box. After all the paperwork was said and done and we got situated, it was time to start the process. I was administered a pill, again I don't remember the name of it, but it was in my cheeks every 2 hours, I think, and that was to naturally start the process of labor. I labored for 13 hours, and then our baby arrived. On February 23rd, 2022, at 11:20 p.m., our daughter, Phoenix, was born. And at that point, I was 15 weeks pregnant, so she was just really itty-bitty. We had the best nursing staff and the best just hospital staff in general. Everybody was so nice and so compassionate. We stayed 10 hours at the hospital, and we got those 10 hours with our daughter. The hospital was nice, and they took her and got professional pictures done for her to send them home with us, and they gave us a stuffed animal for her, and a blanket for her, and a journal, and the memory box. They also got her foot and handprints for me, so I also have those. And then it was time to leave. Walking into a hospital pregnant and walking out not pregnant without your baby is something that I don't wish on my worst enemy. I absolutely hated that walk out. We decided to have her cremated so she could be home with us. And now she is. I could probably do another video that's more informational about anencephaly itself, but this was just a quick little storytelling of our experience with it. Unfortunately, once you have one child with anencephaly, it increases, most of the time, it increases your chances of having more children with anencephaly or other neural tube defects. But in most cases, you can go on to have your rainbow baby. If you have found yourself on this video because you're going through the same thing or have went through the same thing, I am truly so very sorry, and my heart is with you all, and you and your babies are not forgotten, and they will never be forgotten. Thank you so much for listening to my story.